After an offseason of prudent and practical moves, the White Sox went ahead and made their first bad decision. They're bringing back Mike Clevinger, and I don't care if it's a minor league deal. It's a terrible decision for so many reasons that will be discussed on today's episode of Locked On White Sox.
You are Locked On White Sox, your daily Chicago White Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, I'm your host, Todd Weltz, a lifelong Sox fan and the site expert of SouthsideShowdown.com, part of the Fansided Network, and also I've covered Major League Baseball for outlets such as the Associated Press. Thanks for making Locked On White Sox your first listen every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Make sure to hit the like button on today's episode. Subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox if you've not done so already, and also follow or subscribe to the show at wherever you get your podcasts. Well, after a historic 121-loss season, the last thing the White Sox should be doing is finding ways to further alienate their fans. And yet, they went ahead and they're bringing back Mike Clevinger for no logical reason that I'll discuss in the first segment. Then the Cubs DFA'd a player that the Sox should jump at the chance to get. And finally, baseball is trying out the automated ball and strike challenge system in spring training, and I'll discuss why that is a great thing for the game. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. All right. So I'll admit, I actually prefer to not have politics or social issues mixed with sports. One thing I love about sports is it's a great escape from a political and social discourse that right now in this country has become too toxic. And it's because it's probably fed by those in the echo chambers whose folks, folks, I'm here to tell you, if you are in those echo chambers, get out. Okay? And it's both sides because it's being fueled only by people who care about your eyes and your ears paying attention to them so they can get rich, so they can get fame, so they can get an attention. Trust me, I used to produce political talk shows, and I can tell you outside of one host, maybe two that I worked for, it was not about informing you to make changes in the community or to vote better or to be an informed voter. It was about them and advancing their agenda so they can achieve fame and wealth. Look at me. Is basically what a lot of those guys are. So food for thought the next time you turn on Fox News or MSNBC or any of your political talk shows. But sometimes you and I are forced to face sports interacting with political and social issues. And you and I have to deal with Mike Clevinger again. We've had to deal with him for the past two seasons. And it's likely a third because it was reported overnight. And, give it to the White Sox to, again, have it reported overnight, like around midnight. Fansided's Robert Murray reported that the Sox are bringing back the veteran pitcher on a minor league deal. Now to the Clevinger bros and the Bauer bros out there. And I don't care if you guys think, well, yes, you guys act like bros, that in a bad way. This time there's absolutely no reason to bring Clevinger back. And it goes beyond Clevinger's domestic violence allegations to begin with. He was terrible last season. As former host of this show, Herb Lawrence even pointed out on X, formerly Twitter, this is what he has on Ecknerwall23. I have it up for those watching on YouTube. All the good that Chris Getz has done with his front office, manager, and crochet trade is thrown down the drain by bringing back this piece of bleep. I could possibly get it if he was any good, but he sucks and is always hurt. I don't care if it's only a minor league deal. It's bleep. He had a 6.75 ERA, 6.23 FIP, and an 11.5 walk rate last season in 4 starts. And he basically looked out of shape once he got to the big leagues. Because I know he signed late. Just looked terrible. And you could say, well, it's a minor league deal. And Todd, haven't you said there's no such thing as a bad minor league deal? Yes, but I've said it does when it applies to Mike Clevinger and Trevor Bauer. And this does sort of ruin kind of what Chris Getz has been preaching all off season. That he was fixing a lot of things, that he knew the issues. And the one thing you would have hoped Getz would realize that with all the solutions he's trying to implement to all the team's problems is they are still an organization that tends to chase after players that no other organization wants. Courtney Finicum, of, baseball isn't boring, and I've had her on the show. She tweeted this out at Courtney883. I simply have no words. Someone needs to explain to me the White Sox obsession with this guy. They're the only team that has given this guy a shot in the last few years. Doesn't that tell you something? No one wants this guy. No one wanted him in 2023 when he was available to the entire league during August, when you could have added him when he was actually producing. They could have had him. All they had to do was pay the rest of his salary. No one wanted him. And the Sox placed him on that, waivers. 29 other teams passed on him the entire 2024 offseason. Guess who snatches him up? The White Sox. And they gave him a major league deal. And it's deja vu all over again because no one was kicking the tires on this dude. And this is not some former Cy Young winner we're talking about. He's never made an all-star team. He's 34, so it's still not like he's still in the age range where you can say, you know what, it's worth the PR risk. The only thing Clevinger can hang his hat on is that 3.51 career ERA. At this point, the Sox should get the clue that every other team has figured out. He's usually a clubhouse cancer, because remember, Clevinger bros, his Cleveland teammates were so upset with him when he broke those COVID-19 protocols that they said, get him up out of here. Get him the bleep out of our clubhouse. And I don't care what your political stance is when it comes to the pandemic era. He thought he was above the rules and league rules because he wanted to go to dinner. Okay? You can disagree with how things were handled, but there were rules in place, and he blatantly violated them because he wanted to go to dinner. And teams have probably figured out he can never stay healthy through a full season. He's had just one season, 2018, when he's made more than 30 starts. It was also the only season he's pitched over 150 innings when he did reach 200. Otherwise, he's not an innings eater, and he's got an injury history. And also, if there's this feeling he could reclaim himself performance-wise and be traded, come on. That trade value ship sailed a long time ago because no one wants this dude. Again, 3 times available to the entire market, and everybody said we don't want him. And I like how James Fox has this tweet at JamesFox917. I don't understand the infatuation here. He's not even good enough to flip anymore. Minor's deal at least. And even then, just what it represents. And I think Jim Margulis from SoxMachine.com summed it up best as to why this is a terrible move to keep bringing this dude back. This is what he writes. Alas, until the day Clevinger files his retirement papers, White Sox fans can't trust that Getz won't pull that sandwich out of the garbage for one more bite. Side note, he's referring to that Simpsons episode where, Homer keeps eating the big sandwich to eventually where it makes him sick. Anyways, back to the piece. That scene is funny because there's no good reason why Homer formed an emotional attachment to a rancid sub. He's just a glutton, and punishment follows. The degree of absurdity, impaired judgment, and declining acquisition cost is roughly the same here, but the humor fails to make the jump. What is kind of funny is that the White Sox have signed Clevinger the last 2 years, then proceeded to lose 20 more games, going from 81 to 81 in 2022 to 61 and 101 in 2023 to a record-breaking 41 and 121 in 2024. If that pattern holds, the White Sox can be locked in for 21 and 141 finish come October. And then the White Sox will sign him again by March. And also, if you're thinking, well, this is just maybe a depth signing, well, it can't hurt to have a veteran at AAA. He's going to get in the way of guys developing. Sean Anderson, theoretically, former host of the show, put this on Twitter, at @SeanW_Anderson. Is the rotation not this? Jairo Uriarte, Drew Thorpe, I don't only be Drew Thorpe for a little bit because he'd probably be, rehabbing. Nick Nastrini, Jake Eater, Winkleman Gonzalez. Why is Clevinger even going to pitch? Maybe he needs time to ramp up for his disc replacement? Yeah, where? Where are you going to put him? Also, most likely Mason Adams. He's just going to get in the way. And he got in the way last year. You don't need him. And also, again, if you want this veteran presence, even in AAA, to show these young guys, here's how you go about your business and even provide some pitching depth. I don't recall Clevinger providing that sage-like advice when he was in Charlotte, ramping himself up. And then when he went back to try to rehab before his injury got worse, where it needed surgery. I mean, at least it was reported a veteran like Dominic Leone, he went and helped young pitchers when he was on his rehab assignment. Nick Nastrini specifically credited Dominic Leone with helping him. I mean, this is from Scott Merkin's write-up last August when Nastrini came back and had that great outing in August. Quote, Dominic Leone came down. Him and I had a long talk after one of my outings in Nashville. Nastrini said he was doing a rehab stint in AAA, so having some of the guys come down there that knew me as I was here and also knew me as a person, that was a big help, unquote. I don't see Mike Clevinger doing that because Mike Clevinger is all about Mike Clevinger. And for the bros to say, well, how do you know him? You don't know him. And I'm just anticipating because there's going to be comments in there because there's a certain group of people that think that, well, he can spin the ball still, look at his career ERA and stuff like that. And yeah, he can't stay healthy. And as I keep saying, but for the bros that say, I don't know him, you're right. But I can also read and I have eyes and ears. And I heard a man in a 2023 spring training conference squirm and eventually asked reporters to start asking him about like his pitch mix and him developing a slider. He literally said that rather than answer questions about the domestic violence allegations from one of the mother of his children. A very detailed allegation, by the way. Olivia Feinstein, I believe, had very detailed allegations. And for those that want to say, well, he was never charged, baseball didn't suspend him, he agreed to counseling by the league. That's a plea deal, folks. That's probably finding enough evidence to know something happened, but not enough to overcome maybe a union appeal if he was suspended. And maybe even take into account his accuser pointing out that, their child does need Mike to earn a living. And I have no problem if Mike earns a living, but there's also no privilege or, it's a privilege to play in the big leagues. And Mike Clevinger has kind of lost that privilege time and time again through his actions. And remember, this was what he was accused of. This is from The Athletic. Olivia Feinstein, the 25-year-old mother of Clevinger's child, told The Athletic on Tuesday that she's been in contact with individuals from MLB's Department of Investigation since the summer. According to Feinstein, Feinstein, she has detailed to those investigators incidents of physical, verbal, and emotional abuse, including an incident from last June in which Feinstein said Clevinger choked her, and another about 2 weeks later when she said Clevinger slapped her in a hotel room when the team was playing the Dodgers and threw used chewing tobacco on their child. A source familiar with MLB's investigation process confirmed there isn't an open investigation on Clevinger. The source added the White Sox became aware of the allegations after he signed. Feinstein, who agreed to be named in the story, first publicly disclosed their allegations in an Instagram story earlier Tuesday. Quote, I hope the MLB does what they should and puts him in required therapy, maybe even a small suspensions, so he can take time out to really think about why he abuses his kids and their mothers, end quote. Clevinger obviously has denied allegations, but then why agree to counseling? Just saying. To become the best version of himself? Well, then why play Gold Digger as your entrance music during one of your starts? Why show up out of shape last year? Also, why hide you're being investigated by MLB from the White Sox? Because that's what happened, folks. And that's what you keep bringing back. You keep bringing back a guy who always gets hurt, a guy who is usually was terrible last year. He was bad. There's no reason to have him on this team. And again, Bauer bros and Clevinger bros, because those two are tight, and I mentioned that. And I know I'm going to get someone in the comments say, yeah, well, you actually should have signed Bauer. Remember, his Dodgers teammates couldn't wait to get him the heck up out of there because he's a terrible teammate. It's a privilege to play in the major leagues, not a right. And sometimes being a Jag makes you lose that right. And yet the Sox keep giving Clevinger that right because what? Does he know where the bodies are buried? Figuratively speaking. And honestly, again, if you want a veteran arm, even in the minors for depth, there's plenty of better options right now on the market. Zach Davies, Jordan Lyles, Julio Teheran, Jose Urena, Chase Anderson, even Dallas Keuchel. Because remember, his only problem was he just never thought his stuff was a problem. He didn't even change. Heck, bring back Johnny Cueto because at least he's willing to share his knowledge. And those that are going to throw out Luis Rise, even being a better option because he is younger. He actually pleaded no contest to domestic violence charges. So no, not that either. That'd be a bad 1-year contract. Because as Olivia Parker of Marca wrote this, in the middle of the offseason with many teams on a mission to strengthen their rotation, Julio Rise would be a coveted arm. But he's in a situation similar to Trevor Bauer, who is no longer considered an MLB and continued his career in Japan and last year in Mexico Baseball League, where he was a champion for the Diablos Rojas. In MLB, the integrity of its players is taken very seriously, and Julio Urias is a repeat domestic violence offender, so he's unlikely that he'll be rehired, even though an official suspension announcement is still pending after having a video as evidence of the seriousness of the aggression. I believe that came out last year. But for the White Sox, integrity still doesn't matter because they keep bringing this guy back. And why this matters is because you could say Dude, it's just a minor league contract. It goes a long way in context and that the franchise never learns. And maybe I'm being passionate about this because I grew up in a household where I heard there's not a jury in the world that would convict me more than I heard I love you. I know the trauma. Okay? I grew up in it. I'm not going to say who. I'm not going to inference when, but I know it and I've seen it. And I've seen the lasting effects. And I've seen the people and they don't change. And I was hoping that Getz was the guy who finally knew, not only showed know what was wrong with the organization, but he could finally implement the solutions. And he's been bragging about it all off season. But then he goes in and brings in this bad PR player who is just a bad pitcher. But there is a player the Sox should bring in because this team could use some power in the lineup. A young player just became available on the market that the White Sox would be a great fit for. Let's discuss why the Sox should make every effort to acquire Alexander Canario, who just got DFA'd by the Cubs, and that's going to be next on Locked On White Sox. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth-quarter comeback, you can stay in on the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. And I always maintain FanDuel's traditional spreads, money lines, and over and unders. They're fun to play. But if you want to hit big, the futures, the parlays, and the props, they're the way to go. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Welcome back to Locked On White Sox. I'm your host, Todd Welter. Again, make sure to hit the like button on today's episode and subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox if you've not done so already. And if you can't catch the show on YouTube, Locked On White Sox is available on all major podcast platforms. So make sure to follow or subscribe on places such as Apple or Spotify. Either way, get your 30-minute fix of Chicago White Sox baseball venting with me. All right, so let's get to something where you can actually have some hope. And I know it's not a lot when it comes to the White Sox. There's not much for hope. But, for example, it made a ton of sense for the White Sox to bring Mike Tauchman over from the north side to the south side. He still should have enough left in the tank to provide solid production from the left side of the plate. Good glove in the outfield, projected to have 110 WRC plus next season, and he gets on base at a good clip. The Sox should now also entertain bringing in another now former Cub to help with their power deficiency in the lineup. The Cubs designated Alexander Canario, Canario, for assignment to make room on the 40-man roster for Justin Turner. And it was not because they just didn't like him anymore. It's because Canario's path to the big leagues was blocked. There's no room in their outfield, and they can no longer stash him in AAA because he's out of minor league options. So the Sox should do whatever they need to do to add his power bat because this team needs pop. They are severely lacking power. And I say whatever it takes is he's not likely coming to the Chicago White Sox as a waiver claim. The Cubs have a few more days to trade him before, obviously, the easiest path to land him is a waiver claim because I believe the Sox are still at the top of the waiver claim order. So if he somehow does not get traded, then yes, the Sox could definitely put in a claim and get him. But he's still 20, he's going to be turning 25 in May. And he can crush the ball when he gets a piece of it. So you better believe some team is going to make a minor deal to get his immense power potential. Canario has belted 109 homers in the minors with a career .501 slugging percentage. He also can draw walks with a career .346 on-base percentage in the minors. And he also showed some promise in that brief 15-game stretch last season he had with the Cubs. Had a .797 OPS last season and crushed one of the most towering Grand Slam home runs I've ever seen. And the Sox are in their early stages of the rebuild that they should be tapping into that market of those highly touted, highly regarded prospects that have been given up on to see if there is still something untapped. Find your Brent Rooker, or your David Ortiz. Now, obviously, the problem with Canario is he strikes out a ton. His contact rate at AAA was terrible. Plus, he's had injury problems the last 2 seasons. So, obviously, then he's going to fit well. He actually fits right in with the White Sox. I mean, that guy screams White Sox player right there. And, so I'm not thinking he's perfect, but again, they need his power. They could really use his power production. And I would love for Getz to tap into his great relationship with Jed Hoyer and see if a deal can be worked out. I mean, whether it's just swapping Oscar Colas. I'm just throwing his name out there. Not because, again, I wouldn't know because these are minor deals, but Oscar Colas might make sense for the Cubs. He could provide some outfield depth since Colas actually still has a minor league option left. Or maybe you're setting just a scratch off prospect or that player to be named later or cash considerations. But I would take the chance just because this lineup is sorely lacking power. And I don't care if the outfield is already crowded. Austin Slater and Michael A. Taylor have no chance of being with this team when they're possibly competitive by 2027. Canario could and would be 27 in 2027. And hey, right now, no one is penciled in at DH. So just put him there since Brian Ramos has an option. Either way, it is rare for a young power bat with this much potential to be available for probably next to nothing. And the only reason why he's not in the big leagues is, he's had some injury issues and he's blocked by better players at the big leagues. So why not kick the tires on this guy? Speaking of kicking the tires, MLB is testing out the balls and strikes challenge system in spring training, and I'll discuss why this is a godsend next on Locked On White Sox. Looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack open into a wonderful source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling fuller longer. And personally, I love the no shell options. Just a perfect grab and go snack for busy days. My wife and I were trying to eat more heart healthy. And for example, I get the roasted and salted, and it's got a great blend of just enough roasted, just enough salted where I'm not feeling parched. I don't feel like I'm eating a whole bunch of salt. Very good. Oh, that is really good. It's a quick snack too. And with the no shell options, I don't have to clean up around my desk. But hey, if you love cracking open every shell for that satisfying crunch, the in-shell options, they are a classic favorite. Wonderful Pistachios is a complete protein providing all 9 essential amino acids. Get cracking and get snacking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. Welcome back to Locked On White Sox. I'm your host, Hal Welter. Again, shout out to all the everydayers. I appreciate your loyalty. Please hit the like button on today's episode. Recommend to your fellow Sox fans or baseball fans, friends, to subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox, wherever they get their podcasts, as this show is available on all major podcast platforms. So I am all for the automated balls and strike systems, and I don't care if the purists hate it. We're going to agree to disagree. I'm going to die on that hill. I love anything that can make pitch framing not a thing. Yeah, I hate pitch framing. I think it's stupid. That's the one thing where I will rail against when it comes to advanced data in that. Tricking an umpire should not be the most valued skill of a catcher, at least defensively. I'm sorry. What should be valued is blocking pitches in the dirt, pop time, being able to throw runners out now that bases are a little bit wider and you can invite running again. Tricking an umpire into an optical illusion should not make a guy like Yasmani Grandal a valuable player, because he was he's terrible basically at everything else. And he's a clubhouse cancer. Okay, he can get on base. I'll give him that. But otherwise, he can't run. Rarely hits for average, when it comes to bat to ball skills. Rarely hits for power sometimes. Sometimes he has a good power season. Sometimes he doesn't. But what makes him valuable is, outside of getting on base, man, can he pitch frame? But he can't do anything else. Can't block the plate. Can't throw out runners. Got wild pitches all the time. All that pass balls. I believe one of the reasons why the White Sox intentionally walked Max Muncy with that 1-2 count is, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Yasmani Grandal was a catcher. And yeah, I wouldn't trust him to basically block the plate if you're just going to throw a couple balls in the dirt. So I'm glad baseball is testing out the ABS system, as they're calling it, at least when it comes to challenging balls and strikes. And I think it's a fair compromise to challenging balls. It's just there to challenge balls and strikes. So you'll still have the umpire there. It's just, hey, and I saw it yesterday on the Cubs-Dodgers game, and it's a quick review, 15 seconds. And also, you are allowing these umpires to make sure they are always on top of their game. And, at first I wasn't a huge fan for a second because when I saw, I think it was Polite or Perot, I forgot the pitcher's name. I'm sorry. When he challenged it, at first I was like, why are you challenging a pitch early in the count? Like, I was more for this should only then be for called third strikes or ball four. But then again, A, it's literally a quick review. B, you should be trying to keep the umpires on top of their game and stop liberally expanding or shrinking the zone. So that was, but also 3, the reason why was, hey, tennis has it. And you do see tennis players challenging in or out sometimes when it's, 15-30. Deuce. Love 15. I'm sorry, I love when they're like deuce or love 15-30. So, and again, it's a very quick, comes up on the scoreboard. You see if it's a ball or strike. And also, I do like how it's going to be just 2. You get 2 challenges. And if you're wrong, you lose a challenge. If you're right, you get to keep your challenges. So I'm all for it because, again, you can still keep the human element. And I mean, you would still have to have, like, if it was full automation, like full, and I can't hurt because, again, you do get tired of these umpires just liberally expanding or shrinking strike zones. And you'll get like allowing 6 inches off the plate, but they won't call it high. Or they will call it, strikes high, but not off the plate. Like, just you want a more consistent balls and strikes being called. But if you're still going to have a home plate umpire there, because you would need somebody to obviously call plays at the plate, might as well still have them do something beyond just sitting there, because that's what they would be doing. So obviously it's just being piloted this spring, but I do hope it's added next season. I really think it would be good for the game, because for those that are like, wow, all these changes, the purists, the game has gotten better with the pitch clock. I'm sorry, but I was tired of pitchers being human rain delays, stopping because they got to power back up, grab the ball and throw it. There's no reason to be performing Hamlet out on the mound. Okay. And it can get even better with the automated strike zone, but keep it to a challenge system. I think that's a fair compromise, and I think it's definitely going to be better for baseball. Well, that wraps up this edition of Locked On White Sox. Thank you for making Locked On White Sox your first listen today. For your second listen, find Locked On MLB. Baseball guru Sully brings on a daily blend of humor and baseball, keeping you updated on every rumor and story throughout spring training. Find Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. I'll be back on Monday to discuss actually what I wanted to discuss today, but I pushed it back with the Clevinger signing, and that is even despite the Clevinger signing. Actually, Chris Gratz and Will Venable might be the guys to turn things around based on a recent piece in The Athletic. Feel free to leave comments about today's discussion regarding Clevinger signing a minor league deal and it being still a terrible addition. The Sox doing everything they need the Sox should be doing everything they need to add Alexander Canario, and baseball bringing in the automated balls and strikes channel system to spring training. You can leave them at the episode page on YouTube, X, formerly Twitter, at Todd J. Dub, or at Locked On Sox, or you can email me at lockedonwhitesox@gmail.com. Have a great day. Have a great weekend, and I'll see you Monday.